was very difficult for us to really work, because we brought up this matter even to the highest level of the CEO, which is Mr. Shindano himself, because we, as an institute, we have engaged with ECZ on a number of issues. We have called them to officiate at our events where we have been doing non-violence. As an institute, we have called them for a number of non-violent activities and activities that promote youth participation in the democratic process. And we stressed even in the email that we wrote to them to say, we are surprised that this is the kind of behavior that you are going to exhibit to us, who has been an integral stakeholder in this entire electoral process. Because for us, we expected that some of the people who have been very much engaged in this process, we are going to prioritize this kind of things. But the way it happened for us, we believe that it was very much unfortunate, and there is no really recourse that the answers that we are given were not very, very satisfactory.
You've talked about not having, presence or members from the institute, your institute, at the totaling center. What about at the polling stations? We've heard different political parties and even independent candidates lamenting that at different polling stations, certain polling stations were marred with malpractices, issues to do with violence, and other candidates coming up to say, my monitors were not even given Gen 12. As an institute, how would you describe such a scenario?
Yeah, so looking at the way the ECZ conducted itself on the issue of ensuring that monitors are present in the polling stations, when you look at the whole issue to come with at the civic center, all those queues the way they were, I can clearly state that there were a number of people probably who wouldn't have gotten it. It's not surprising, because a number of people were not, they didn't manage to get it at the time of closure. And also the fact that they didn't allow the process to be extended like the way it has been done in the past. On their part, I think that there was a challenge there. So those concerns could be genuine because of the way the ECZ operated. It's on the last minute to do with all this entire process that had to ensure that the monitors were present in there. We saw, even us, we are a victim of that kind of inefficiency on their part to ensure that we are not able to get that. Yeah.
As an institute, I know that you are involved in a number of issues to make sure that you grow, leaders into in becoming, better leaders or vibrant leaders. Also, issues to do with, discouraging political violence. We had 16 presidential candidates. All of them, before the voting day, they were bubbling with confidence that we are going to carry the day.
Yeah.
And then it changed and became more like a two-month race.
Yes.
Where do you think these political parties that were nowhere near the two went wrong in terms of, selling their manifesto and their vision to the Zambian people?
First and foremost, most of our political parties, they don't really spend more time to kind of do some kind of research about the political climax in the country. If you look at the political climax in the country, it would have given you an indication to say, okay, this is probably the Zambian people. This is where they are going to look at the direction of how they want things to be done. And for us, the way they were conceding defeat in the first, as they are counting the votes, it will tell you that there's a lot that has to be done in these political parties. Because if you're going to go to an election and you don't really understand also the political environment where you are, there are times whereby you know that at this particular time we don't have the ground even for us to go in that election. And this is also the issue of about what is the interest that you have in the election. Is it the interest of us making a foot, or is it the interest of the Zambian people to say we have the Zambian people at heart? And if the Zambian people are at heart, we would have ensured that we reduced even those candidates. People would have backed people with a certain manifestos or certain ideals that are similar to those that they have. But because of long timing, most of them, it was the issue of long timing, because some of them have gotten votes that are, even if you're going to talk about a national election, it's about maybe 30,000 votes, the whole entire country. So you divide by 10 provinces, you discover that those are some of the, you can see how probably a candidate is popular or unpopular. So there's a time where they need to analyze some of these things, and probably they would have gone in electoral parks where they filled in some candidates and they do that. But mostly, one of the things that we see is that this issue of looking at the bigger picture in the Zambian kind of politics has been something that has not been really considered.
Mr. Hakoola, these political parties,
yes,
it is now constitutional that a presidential candidate, one of the qualifications for him or her to qualify to stand, they need to present 100 supporters per province.
Yes.
And all the 16 managed to present 100 supporters per province.
Yes, yes.
But when we started receiving results,
yes,
even per province, others were failing to garner 100 votes.
Yes.
Then where are they getting it all wrong? Why? You present 100 supporters backing you, all of them with voters' cards and NRCs, showing that indeed these are registered voters. But votes, at the end of the day, they are nowhere to be seen.
Yes.
Where?
Yeah, so unfortunately, what happens is that it's the same people. PF comes to get the supporters, they're the same people. UPND comes to get the same supporters, they are the same people. DP comes to get the supporters, they are the same people. But at the time when they are going to vote for an election, they are going to vote for the party of their choice. So you find that mostly it's the same people, and mostly when they are doing these functions, there are some form of incentives that they are giving these supporters. Probably they'll give them some transport, they'll give them some lunch and so forth, and they'll participate in some of these events. But in terms of them buying in what that party is bringing on table, they are not even for there. So it's just something that they are going to do for them for self-sustenance at that particular time, but it's not something that really on the ground they are there. And also, that's why I have said is that most of these political parties have not invested in research and development, and that's why you see their poor performance in these elections. And also you would be able to understand, to see that they haven't really had that kind of development in their parties.
These political parties, when they were campaigning, they talked about having a national character and having presence in all the 10 provinces and having structures.
Yeah.
Then can we say these politicians or political parties are living in denial, where they can come to the media and tell the Zambian people that our party is a party with the national character and we've got presence in all the provinces, wards and constituencies? Then at the end of the day, votes are nowhere to be seen. Can we start now holding these political parties to start answering to our questions, or to be responsive and ask them, say, why? You told us that you've got presence in all these, but how come you are not getting votes? Who should politicians, presidential candidates now start talking to their, leaders at different structures, or the Zambian people should now start demanding, say, you lie to us, these numbers don't lie? Where should we start from?
Firstly, it's supposed to be self-introspection before we even judge them. As I said, they don't spend time to ensure that they look at how is it that what is making our party grow, and they should be able to reach a level to say, okay, if we are going to have so many supporters, from these supporters, who are our genuine members and who are our genuine people that we are going to ensure that we that are following us genuinely. So political parties should be able to have a way in which they are going to identify that these are people who are genuinely following us and they are going to be genuine about them being our members. But because of lack of these programs that they can even identify who really is with them, they are going to generalize from a certain scenario to say they have the members. And also to come back to the ground, we have moved around the country. There are very few political parties that have got structures around the country. We don't want to start arguing with them to say, look, you have these structures or not. But you can just do your own survey. You even phone someone who's probably in Kitwe and ask them to say, how many political parties have got structures there? Have you ever seen a word there and everything? So there's more of a media talk and more of the talking to the Zambian people through the media and through other platforms. And they can be social media politicians and also politicians on all these channels, all these platforms of communication, such as the media and so forth. But in terms of the ground, they are not home ground rooted. That's how you find that they are shocking, because some of the things that happen is that there are some politicians whereby on social media they have got a presence, like the president-elect, and you also go down, you discover that there are structures on the ground. But there are some whereby on social media they'll boost their page, and after you boost your page, you have the numbers there. But the reality doesn't transform that those are your members. It doesn't transform with that. And therefore they will get a shock of their life, whereby you'll be getting a zero in the entire constituency, because you don't have the following and you don't have the people.
With what?
If you have the structures, okay, let's say that the Zambian people hasn't voted for you, but at least the people from your structure should vote for you.
Does it mean even the people that are on the structures don't have confidence in their presidential candidates?
That is what is happening. So that's what we are saying. If they have the structures, they genuinely have the structures, at least we would have seen a certain level of numbers. How many constituencies are there? From each and every constituency, so we would have seen that, okay, from this constituency or from this, there are these kind of numbers that are there. So you will be able to see even the voting pattern. In certain areas where probably you see that, okay, this candidate is performing well, those are now the genuine structures that are there. Because they have influenced one or two people. But in areas where you find that there is none, it's a very highly unlikely that they don't have even a structure.
Let's talk about, now that we saw 16 presidential candidates and others were getting 2, 3, even zeros, 0, 1, in a constituency where there is the structure at the constituency level, and then there are these words, before we even talk about branches and sections. With what has happened, can we say these politicians have learned something, and come 2026, maybe we shall see a few presidential candidates?
Yeah, a number of politicians have learned a lot. Firstly, coming through the ruling PF, the outgoing government, is that they have to learn. They have learned, because one of the things that is there to learn is that there is so much propaganda that is purported in terms of politics. But what is really the Zambian people talking on the ground? Those are some of the things that has to be learned from the politicians. Also, we have seen political parties that have spent a lot of money in terms of adverts, putting all these billboards here, there, and everything. But what is it that have the Zambian people buying in the message there? So there is the issue of just generalizing the messages and also reaching out, having the actual structures. So in terms of having structures, I think the political parties now would have to spend more of building their structures and spending less money on media, because this is the other way that they did. They spend more money on getting the billboards. They spend more money on just printing T-shirts. Anyone can wear a T-shirt, but doesn't mean that you are transforming that into a vote. So they should have spent more money to reach out to the structures, organize the structures, so that they ensure that they have a strong ground. But they want to have a strong public outreach, but their structures are very weak. As
an institute, like, and that is the issue that you've touched, that is where my next question was coming from. And let me just go ahead and ask it. We saw some political parties and presidential candidates putting up billboards. For example, give an example of the outgoing government. They had space nearly in each and every radio station, on each and every radio station, on TVs, on Facebook, as well as campaign songs, campaign materials. Whilst those other political parties wouldn't even spend much on coming up with billboards, flyers, and posters. I'll give an example of the Third Liberation Movement, Kitonga. Up to now, I didn't even see his poster. I didn't see his adverts. He wasn't even more active on social media compared to others. But he managed to beat those who had numbers on social media, who had posters. How, as an institute, how are you training these political parties, or how are you messaging or putting up your messages to tell them what, like in the Zambian setup, what really sells? Is it a campaign song? Is it political regalia? Is it a number of flyers or billboard? Or how is it supposed to be done, and where are we missing it as with our politicians in this country?
First and foremost, one of the things that we have to learn is that in Zambia, firstly, as I say, there's no investment into the research and development, because that's where you get your answers into. Us as an institute, we do more of the issues of research. Now, what happened is that we had an economy where people, the Zambian people, were looking for solutions to do with their day-to-day lives. How are we going to have a government that will look at our day-to-day issues, the high cost of living? That was many issues that were there. The issues of this issue of cadarism, this issue of also breakdown of the rule of law. Those are the things that the Zambian people are looking at. Now, instead of you to reassure the Zambian people or to say that we are going to bring sanity and order, we are going to ensure that we reduce the cost of living. And even if you look at the kind of debate that was put, when you're talking about the cost of living, other politicians were even suggesting to say if things are expensive, you bring candle. The debate was very low, below par. So you don't expect to garner voters when you're going to be shooting in the air. People are expecting you to give pragmatic and practical solutions on the things that matter. But you are going to spend colossal amounts of money to get a song that people, what is the audience? The audience is, who is it that you are going to look at? Probably those are people who are not even going to be voting. But if you're going to get a song and you're going to talk about it, to say that song, what is the message in that song? You're going to say, I'm coming back and sit on the chair. That is the song that you have given. Are you giving the Zambian people any message in that song? Are you giving that Zambian people a message in that song? So the song is just an empty song. That doesn't reach out to people. You are probably doing something for entertainment. But you can create the same song, the song with a message that has to reach out to the people, to tell them, to say, this is what we are telling you in this message. In this message, we are going to ensure that we reduce the cost of living. We are going to deal with this, we are going to deal with that, and we are going to deal with that. But most of them, they spend a colossal amounts of money doing the wrong things. And that's why probably, even after spending all those messages, you put a very big billboard, probably you put a big billboard. I saw one by Munali there. You put it, you see it. You discover that most of the motorists are the ones driving here and there and everything. You would have used that same amount of money to go in an area whereby you get your voter register, you check where are the people probably are in the Mandevo, in Kanyama. You go there and do other kind of outreach. That is what research does. But you're going to reach the wrong target. You're spending money having a billboard. I saw some billboard there by Munali roundabout. It's a big one from one corner to the other. You spend all that money. Are you reaching to the right audience?
As an institute, are you worried?
Sorry?
As an institute, are you worried to see, political parties putting up big billboards? And when you see, maybe it is because we are told in this country that Zambians are rich, and even civil servants or police officers are able to buy 4, 5 cars. And so that is why you put up a big billboard at a highway so that those that are driving can see it.
Yeah, we are not really worried about the way people are going to campaign. That is their preserve as a political party. But for us, what we are, from answering from where you came from, to say where would they have done better in terms of reaching out, that is where we think that they should have looked at who's the audience so that they do that. But in terms of reaching out, we believe that the way they should have reached out to people, they should have gone in the communities, and probably that's where we even had probably more votes from the incoming government, because they were able to go in these areas like Kanyama, they were able to go in these areas. Those are where the votes are. So these are some of the reasons why some of the political parties spend huge amounts of money in the wrong places and in the wrong audience, and they were not able to get votes. For us, it's about a strategy. The strategy was not there, and that's why they would have put billboards all around the country and still not get votes.
We saw during campaign some political violence which made the Electoral Commission of Zambia to suspend 2 political parties, namely the outgoing and the incoming, political party that formed government. But on the voting day, something that we didn't expect, violence occurred in Northwestern Province, which led to the murdering or the demise of the then former Northwestern Provincial Chairperson in the name of Jackson, Kungo. As an institute, what do you think led to this? And in moving forward, how can we avoid such things?
Firstly and foremost, as an institute, we see that the action of murdering of Kungo as unfortunate. And going forward, we believe that it was very much important that law enforcement agency which was deployed should have been on high alert. For us as an institute, we saw some lapses in terms of the way probably enforcement would have responded to a number of issues, and these are some of the why incidents would get ugly. But there is need to ensure that you respond on time, to ensure that life is lost and we don't have a situation where we lose the lives. As we have said, as an institute, we don't look at a life as a person supporting a political party. We look at it as a human capital for the country. We look at it as a breadwinner. We look at it as a citizen of the Republic of Zambia. So those are some of the things that we are supposed to look at. Otherwise, we noted even the other incidents of violence that happened in other places or in other places around the country. So law enforcement should have been on high alert. But in a scenario where we had a number of issues to do with law enforcement in terms of ensuring that we have standard operating procedures, and when law enforcement is now going to be getting instructions from politicians, it's very difficult for them to be able to respond to issues, and you find that there's a high level of compromise that was seen throughout the period. Even one of the things that we noted, even in our assessment as we are doing our non-violence activities across the country, was that standard operating procedures were not followed. We noted that the ruling party was allowed to was given these rights where they could be able to campaign all around the country. But we saw the restriction of the opposition, because even when they tried to enter into Chipata, they were blocked from a number of places where they tried to enter in the country. They were blocked. So those are some of the things that were there. There was no fair playing field, and that we stated even earlier to say the ground is not fair. So some of these things also agitated citizens, whereby probably people want to now police themselves. They want to ensure that they protect themselves, they protect whatever is supposed to be around them, instead of allowing the law enforcement to do. And we stated as an institute that one of the causes of violence is when law enforcement agency is compromised. And when a law enforcement agency is compromised, they don't want to do the correct thing at the correct time. Citizens themselves are now going to reach a level where they want to now protect themselves, and these are now going to bring in acts of violence. But if we are going to have an alert police force, if we are going to have an alert law enforcement agencies, then citizens will not reach a level where they have to protect themselves, where they have to do all these kind of things. An alert law enforcement or police is what we needed for us to ensure that some of these incidences are avoided.
With the violence that occurred in Northwestern Province, the outgoing government also pointed a finger at the incoming government, the incoming party, to say, even in Southern Province, they abducted some of their polling agents. In Western Province, they chased some of their polling agents as they started counting. And we saw a letter emerging from State House.
Yes.
To have been written by a special assistant to the president, asking the Electoral Commission of Zambia to stop announcing because the elections were not free and fair.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so first and foremost, there's a process. And the process is that what guides the electoral system in the country is the electoral process and also the Constitution of the Republic of Zambia. And the allegations of abduction and everything, they are supposed to be channeled. Actually, as an institute, we issued a statement to that effect to say, look, there's a procedure. And the procedure has been there in Zambia to say, look, the previous election that we had, there was a matter arising where the opposition, by then the incoming government, was saying they didn't have June 12. Yes. And they had to wait until the time whereby the law provided, because the Electoral Commission of Zambia has no jurisdiction, has got no power to stop the issue of counting. It is only that preserve of the Constitutional Court after the whole entire election. That's when they are now going to file in probably a petition to say this is our grievances that are there. So to have a person who has been sitting, who is a legal person, and also to have that kind of thing, it's not a procedure that is supposed to be followed. The procedure is that after you count all they declare the winner, the ballots have been counted, and there's a winner. Then there's a procedure. Right now, this is a procedure now. After the presidential elect has been, there is a president-elect. This is now the time, probably, if they have grievances, this is now when you are supposed to bring in the grievances. But it was premature to talk about that issue. The procedure is that it's supposed to be now. That is the way it's supposed. Because you can bring up any other matter and say, we have had this scenario. And if the law was so open, to open it up to say any other grievance that you back without bringing in probably evidence and all these things is supposed to be tendered, then the elections will be abrupted and it will be stopped at any other time. But the procedure is that after you count there, then you bring in your issue to the courts of law. Then you prove to say this is what was happening at that particular time. So at this time, they are even open to do that.
Mr. Hakoola, you've talked about procedure, and you've talked about this is how it's supposed to be. The outgoing president is a lawyer, a qualified lawyer.
Yes.
And there are also special assistants, people that do help the president in understanding these issues. Does it mean, who failed here? Is it the head of state who failed to understand the procedure, the former head, the outgoing head of state who failed to understand the procedure, or we can cast a blame on the handlers of the presidency and the advisors, say they advised the president wrongly?
Yeah,
or it was the party?
I think they were making a political move. That's what I would
on
say.
Issues that are clear,
yes,
they know the procedure.
I think they were making a political move. To say that they don't understand the law, I think that the people around there would be able to understand the law. They have a legal advisor who's there and a number of other people who are there, so they understand the law. So I think it was a time of politics, and you know there is also the distinction where we're going to talk about the presidents and also the issue of some of these statements that are political in nature. They are supposed to come from the SG of the political party.
So you call that later, and what was of interest and their contention as political in nature?
Yeah, because they understand the procedure and they decided to talk about the matter despite it's like the procedure is supposed to be done like this. Then now you go and talk about the matter out of the procedure. So that's a political now in nature. It's a political connotation that was brought in. So that one was supposed to come from the SG and not come from the respected office of the president on a letterhead of State House. That was not supposed to be done. It was supposed to come from the SG politicking in that angle, because the rules are very clear and the people around, they understand. And that office is supposed to be respected, not to be brought into such kind of things. So that one was supposed to come from probably the SG or the media director or those guys that are, all those people around the issues of politics, but not from that office. Coming from that office, it actually brings a lot of issues in question.
Now we have the president-elect, and you've talked about procedure. Do we see the party going to court to petition based on what was written or contained in that letter, and also what the Secretary General of the outgoing party said at Mulungushi, talking about the 3 provinces, Southern, Western, and Northwestern? Do we see them going to court?
It's their constitutional preserve if they want to go to court. But for us as an
institute, the president has conceded defeat, and he said he's ready and is going to hand over power. Do we see the party going to court to petition the
I don't think they'll be able to go to court, having conceded defeat, and also looking at also the margin of the difference in terms of the margin. I don't think that even the areas that you are going to say you have a challenge in, even if you are going to have a by-election there, I don't think that they'll be able to get votes that will be able to do any difference to the election. So I think that it will be a waste. It's just a waste of time for them to actually petition.
Mr. Hakoola, the party that has formed government, that will be ushered into government, come Tuesday next week when the inauguration will be taking place. They started as an alliance, and there were about 13 or so political parties coming together. And the outgoing party that was in power talked about alliances not working in this country. And indeed, we saw some presidential candidates or presidents of different political parties pulling out of the alliance. PEP was part of the alliance, they pulled out. PAC was part of the alliance, they pulled out. NAREP was part of the alliance. NTC was part of the alliance. And they remained, a few of them, about 6. People said alliances or pacts have never worked in this country. Here we are. They have formed a government as the UPND alliance. What do you think? What was the secret? What do you think was the secret for them to prove to Zambians that for the first time an alliance has worked and they have formed government?
So I think that the secret, firstly, was the messages that they had. I think that the messages were touching on the interest of the Zambian people. As I said, that the messages that we are going to give are the ones that are going to either inspire Zambians to look at the party, to say this is the party that we can vote for or not. So, as I earlier alluded, that the issue of the high cost of living was one of the issues. The issues to do with cadarism and so forth. So you look at probably people like KBF, they talked mostly about the issue of cadarism, that say this is something that we are not interested in. Then the issue of high cost of living kept on coming, and that is probably where the Zambian people could have said, okay, this is why we need this alliance at this particular time. Because most of times when we would be able to analyze issues from a civil society point of view, to talk about the issue of high cost of living as an institute, we would say, no, these guys are being political. But see, now, with the eyes that we have now, people could be able to analyze, to say, look, this is now the actual thing that was there on the ground. And according to the way people voted, the issue of the high cost of living was a serious issue, and the UPND alliance managed to tackle that issue.
You've talked about 2 issues or so that characterized the campaigns, messages in the campaigns. You've talked about the high cost of living, the economy. We saw the party that will be leaving office comparing the cost of living in Zambia and other countries. And indeed, they were coming with well-documented papers showing the price of minimum in Zambia and the price of minimum in South Africa, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Congo, and telling people to say these others in other countries are coming to Zambia to buy. So you are complaining it is about 150, 135, in other countries 600, 400. Also the issue of cadarism. We saw the party that is leaving office disowning those that were terrorizing people. So these are not our members. So when you talk about cadres harassing marketeers or people in bus stations, these are not members of the party. So where do you think Zambians made their own judgment and decided to remove this party from power when they managed to defend themselves on the economy, that Zambia is not the only one that is passing through hardships? In fact, Zambia is better off compared to Zimbabwe and Malawi.
Yeah, so some of the arguments that were there, Zambian people are also very intelligent. There are people who are intelligent, and some of the arguments that were there, they are arguments that were not really holding much water. Because when you look at it, firstly, when you are talking about an economy like Congo, Congo is an economy that is not producing any maize. They are dependent on what's this? They are dependent on what is happening here. They import from here. So if you are going to have the same price with the people who produce, then you have a problem. Then what are you doing? If you are going to look at South Africa, what is the capacity of maize that they grow? And you are going to have the same prices. It means that us who are producing are supposed to reduce the prices. So those kind of comparisons, they were not here, neither here nor there. What they should have done is to look at things with an eye to say, look, the person who's producing and the person who's exporting and buying, how do you compare with Congo, who's buying from here? People are coming here to buy because the things here we are producing and the things are high. So how do you produce and things are high and you are making that an argument? Then your argument is not holding water. You are supposed to produce. If me I produce It means that me who produces, my things are supposed to be lower. Because when they cross the border, they are supposed to be charged taxes. After someone makes a profit from the taxes, the government gets its taxes, then the person also wants to make a profit. So that person who's selling in that country, the goods have been taxed. The goods are also going to be sold at a profit. Then you're going to compare the prices. So those are the arguments that we are going to say the Zambian people rejected. Because such kind of arguments, there's no way you are producing and you are also going, even me, if I'm going to buy something probably from China, and I bring it here, I'll sell it at a profit. If I buy something probably from Turkey, I'll sell it at a profit. But if the good from Turkey and here is the same, then there's a challenge there. So the arguments were not really, they were more on a defensive kind of argument. They were not really talking to the Zambian people on issues that were really the way things were on the ground. They were more on the defenses, and that's why even when you talked about a number of the things that they did in the last minute, such as the debt swap, as we are speaking, that thing that will not be sustainable even for the current government, the government that is going to come into power. It's not going to be sustainable, and if they are going to adopt it going further, then we're going to see. Because already there was the issue of the high cost of debt that was there. And internal borrowing has been the local institutions, there's the internal and external borrowing.
The issue of debt and the issue of the economy, the issue of Eurobonds. Do you think Zambian people, give example of some of us who are coming from the compounds, yes. Do you think Zambians got to understand the issue of debt, the issue of inflation, the issue of the dollar when in this country we're using a kwacha?
Yeah, so people might not understand the analysis behind it, but the impact will make them to understand. For example, if you want to borrow to the banks here in Zambia or the microfinance, you discover that the cost of borrowing is high because government has borrowed from the private sector, and the private sector has been suffocated by government borrowing. Now, if you want to borrow, government has not serviced those debts that they have borrowed. They have borrowed from the banks, they've borrowed from the microfinance, they've borrowed. So it means that there's no liquidity. So if now the private sector want to give money to an individual like me, because the government is not paying, servicing that debt which they already borrowed, they have to put a margin which is higher so that they now make money. Because the interest rates are around 15%, 20%, even 25%, very high. So if you're going to do a business as a local entrepreneur, you are going to borrow and you'll be paying at that rate. How is your business going to survive? You're going to have the cost of production, which is very high, because buying power is very high in Zambia. So they might not understand all these things, but the impact of a person there who's going to be welding is going to feel the impact about all these things. The impact of the entrepreneur who wants to get money from the bank and finds the interest rate very high is going to feel that. So the impact is what they are going to feel. So these people didn't manage to ensure that they put in the strategies to ensure that they tackle this thing in the time that they were in.
As we conclude, Mr. Hakoola, what are the expectations from the Zambian people to the party that will be forming government?
First and foremost, as an institute, we would like to congratulate the president-elect, Hakainde Hichilema, and his entire team. And the expectations for us as an institute is firstly the issue of cadreism, rule of law is very much important. One of the things that made the PF very unpopular is the issue where cadres usurp the powers of the institutions of governance and they put them in their own hands. And now when you want to have something resolved, you have to call certain people, probably in political parties, like a party affair. That is one of the things that made the PF very unpopular. And the Zambian people voted out cadreism. And that is something very personal with the Zambian people. When you hear them about the issue of cadreism, and a number of people will tell you that and say, this is not how we should stay in our own country. So that is something that we expect the president-elect. We've heard him talk about it. And we expect the UPND government to be very strong about this issue to ensure that cadreism does not take its ugly face on the Zambian political scene again. The other thing that we expect as an institute, also expectation of the Zambian people, is that we should be able to have a cabinet that is balanced. We saw from the previous regime where we had a cabinet that was inclined to almost 2 regions, 80% of people coming from 2 regions, and there was no regional balancing. Also the private, the civil, the public sector. So we are supposed to ensure that that does not ensure that it takes place, because the victory of the UPND also brings in the issue of breaking the tribal talk in Zambia, that racial segregation against a certain group of people. It brings in that kind of end to say, look, beyond this thing is not supposed to be taking shape in our politics, and it breaks that. So let us ensure that that is not there. We expect young people to be also part of the cabinet. As we said earlier, to say, look, our previous cabinet, we are even debating if Bowman was under the age of 35. We expect young people to be part of the cabinet. We expect women to be also represented in decision making and other interest groups. We don't just expect the same business as usual kind of politics. We don't expect a business as usual government. We expect a government that is going to be very practical and pragmatic in the way it's going to do this issue.
Mr. Hakoola, thank you so much for making an appearance on this special interview.
Yes.
Thank you so much. There you have it. This has been the special interview on a channel of choice, and I've been discussing post-election analysis with Mr. Hakoola from the Institute. That is a civil society organization. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same place. But don't forget, at 20 hours or 20:30, I will be discussing issues to do with Zambian elections with Bobby Wine from Uganda.
So here's how to pay using Airtel Money. Ensure your decoder is turned on and tuned to channel 1. Dial *778#, then select the option that says Make Payment. Select Pay TV, then select Muvi TV. Enter the 12-digit smart card number, then enter the amount you wish to pay. Enter the Muvi TV account number, omitting the dash before the last digit. Then select the amount you wish to pay.
For inquiries, call customer care on 0764 250055 or 0764